Y voy a ir llamando, por favor, a don Luis de Salvador Carrasco.
Okay, let's start with Mr. Carrasco, Director of Technological Innovation. Fernando Suarez Lorenzo, President of the National Directorate of IT Colleges. Alejandra de Iturriaga Gandini, Director of Telecommunications and the Audiovisual Sector of the National Securities and Competition Market Commission. Félix Jodra Abuelo, the Commissioner and Director of Data Protection of the National Police Force. Cristina Morales Puerta, Secretary General of Digital Administration, and Raquel Poncela González, Director of Digital Services at the Royal Mint of Spain.
Bien, veo que están todos los ponentes.
Okay, so I see that all the speakers are here. Let's give floor to the second session, roundtable of the morning, about the criteria for the protection of minors when accessing adult content. Let's start with a presentation that's going to be done by Mr. Luis de Salvador Carrasco, Director of the Department of Technological Innovation, and then we'll move on to the next speakers. Please speak 5 minutes each. Sorry. Thank you very much, Luis. You have the floor. Thank you. Thank you, Joaquin. First thing I would like to say is, welcome you to this new second session where we celebrate the 30th years of the Aepd. It's perfect to be here with the people around me on this table to talk about a topic which are in fact very interesting, the criteria on how to protect minors when accessing inappropriate content on the internet. And for that, we have done a very important activity and work done by all the staff in the agency with the support and the help of our director, España, who has given us a lot of motivation for this project, and with a very hard work done by the Digital Innovation Department, which has worked really hard on this. And this has materialized into a code of principles to protect not just minors on the internet, but also to protect fundamental rights of all citizens when freely surfing on the internet. As we have stated on that code, what interests us and concerns us the most is the interest of minors. Minors and the interest of minors cannot be used as an excuse to violate fundamental rights, but cannot be used to instrumentalize the data protection legislation in order not to implement those data protection mechanisms. Why did we have to do this work? Well, I think it's quite obvious. We all believe that the protection of minors is a moral duty based on ethical principles that we share when we work on the internet. Unfortunately, we have had to wait for the legislation to apply this efficiently and effectively, and for the protection of minors is necessary and requires the intervention of many public authorities and institutions. But we also need to make sure that we protect them. And an example of this is all the people that are representing their institutions here. And some of you also sitting amongst the audience. And I would like to thank you and the audience for the work that you're doing to protect minors. So what is the goal of this code of ethics? Well, the objective of this code of ethics is to make sure that we have ideal systems to protect minors before inappropriate content. Ideal beyond technical ideality. Now, we are talking about being ideal also from the point of view of protecting our model of society, our duties and rights. And therefore, we need to look into this with a broad perspective to protect broadly minors, including the fundamental rights, but also including the right of the citizens as a whole. With regard to the fundamental rights of citizens as a whole and the protection of the important interest of the minors, that's what is the basis for this code. The first two principles of the Code of Ethics is the protection of the minors, not just the protection of the minor from the point of view of their mental health, privacy or intimacy and development, but also the physical security and safety of that minor. And that's why the principle number 1, it's very important to make sure there's no identification and there's not possible to geolocate a minor using these tools. And obviously, this cannot be based on the resources that need to be executed by a minor. No, this has to be done on be based on an authorization to access certain adult content. Also, a system is not going to work if it's not trustworthy, if it limits censorship or it leads to censorship or it limits freedom, because it's not just about the minors, it's also about the adults and other people in vulnerable situations, and we have to make sure there's no discrimination. And that's why we developed the following principles to make sure that there's an anonymous authentication in terms of the checking of the data, so that it is not misinterpret what is appropriate content, and so that we can freely surf the web, and to make sure that the authentication is done accurately and that classifies the authority to access. Obviously, being able to authorize or being able to access adult content cannot be an excuse for the geolocation or segmentation of adults. And that's why Principles 6 and 7 talk about that. People, just because of their accessing adult content, cannot be profiled. There cannot be a follow-up of those services. And also, not all minors are the same. Not all minors need the same protection. There are different vulnerabilities, different problems. And that's where the families are important. And families need to be part of the equation, of that ecosystem to protect minors. And obviously, any system that is ideal, that is effective, will also need to be proportional. And thus, it may be very important that the freedom of citizens is not limited by the use of the systems. More specifically, not just the fundamental rights need to be protected, the freedom of thought, of speech, of education, but also the freedom to act digitally, which is no longer an option. And also the fact that these systems must be aligned with the principles of the identity as a right and the guarantees of security that are implemented on the directive and national legislation and the European Union guidelines. All in all, what we are proposing is, or the framework of this code of conduct or code of ethics is not just about, as Mar España said, developing proof of concept to show the feasibility of these principles. No, we want to go beyond that. We want them to have a purpose at a European level and globally. And with given the time limitations we have, I'll give the floor to Mr. Fernando Suarez.
Muchísimas gracias, Luis. Muchísimas gracias a la Agencia.
Thank you to the agency. It is an honor to be here, and I would like to thank the agency for this 30 and congratulate them for these 30 years. 30 years in which the world has changed technologically at an unexpected speed. We can say that we live in a real revolution and not evolution, and therefore we need to change our responses, whereas in an evolution you only change the questions. So the questions change, but also from the Association of Telecoms Engineers and IT Engineers, we've worked with UNICEF and the University of Santiago Compostela in one of the largest studies European-wide about how the teenagers see the internet and the impact it causes on the daily life. Teenagers between the ages of 11 and 18. We have interviewed more than 50,000 in all the different regions and schools in Spain to collect not just figures, but not quantitative, but also qualitative data. That's really important to highlight. And the feelings in general are positive. They normally feel happy, supported, comfortable, but there's also insecurity, segregation, and fear. And one of the conclusions of this study is the lack of supervision or oversight by parents, the lack of the role model on the use of screens that the parents provide. And it is also true that many times the families do not have the tools, and therefore the collaboration with the data protection agency is needed in order to create tools that can make it easier for parents. The study, amongst some of the figures that result from it, they mention things that are quite significant. Over 80% of the youngsters between the age of 11 and 18, are in social media. 60% of them have more than one profile in each social media. 1 out of every 3, so they're between 11 and 18 years of age, recognize that they have entered pornographic websites. Or another important figure is more than 70,000 teenagers gamble online frequently. So therefore, we need solutions to limit the access to content with age verification. In our case, we have developed a solution. It's an ad hoc, however, allows you to check that this is compatible with systems such as the iOS system. In the design of this application, we based ourselves on 3 key things. Reliability, obviously. Secondly, ease of use. It cannot be a handicap for users. And thirdly, the guarantee that the identity data will never leave the mobile phone of the user. What we have developed is a tool that makes it possible to store the data of an user through an FCC by using an ID or a passport or any other proof of identity. And making sure that the user has a specific age before they're able to access any content. It's not the same accessing social media than illegal content or gambling or pornography sites. As I was said, the use, we tried to make it as simple as possible through NFC. NFC, the users can read the document that they have in order to obtain the age. The document has to be in force. We also check that this is an official document because of the different signatures of the documents. You have to check that it's a valid document. And once the app has done that, it verifies the identity of the person that's providing this ID, for instance, either through biometric data or through a selfie that guarantees that it's the same user, or through the digital certificates that the ID has. In the case of the passport, there's no electronic certificate, so it has to be done through biometric data. This is stored in a safe place, only accessible through the biometrics of the mobile device. And after that, when the user wants to access content for adults, they have to, through that gateway, there will be a data check in order to make sure that they comply with the age criteria. In any case, we'll always ask users for their voluntary use, and we'll inform them that they're accessing this data. Also, there will be a register of all the accesses so that users, a tutor, like a guardian, a mom, or a dad, can see the access that's been done and the content that's been accessed. And in future development of the app, we can create parental guidance, and we could also maybe check the age through websites, or we could also be able to do it thanks to the police force with the creation of QR codes. That's all. I think this is a very robust tool, an application, but I think the most important tool that we have is education. And the future of a nation is as necessary as the next generation of citizens is. So therefore, we have a responsibility towards the future. Thank you.
I will now give the floor to Alejandra de Iturriaga from the CNMC. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to support the words of the CNMC councillor, congratulate the Aepd for this celebration. For us, it is an honor to be part of this panel with these respectful experts, all of them involved on data protection and protection of minors online. As the Director of Telecommunications and Audiovisual Sector, I will explain what we have done at the organization to be able to protect minors. After the approval of the directive in 2019, the CNMC started protecting minors online, especially with regard to pornographic content. We had different reports establishing which contents were being harmful and which measures could be adopted. This meant that the CNMC adopted a specific position regarding this content, including different regulations.
Muchas gracias. Esta posición de la CNMC, como digo,
the position, as I was saying, of the CNMC has been transferred into certain regulations that have been adopted. First of all, we have set our commitment towards the protection of children in the online sphere. The video platforms as a new agent within the regulation are not responsible for their contents, but they do have to adopt certain important measures, and we are the ones to verify these measures. Thirdly, taking into account what has been said before, this is a trans-border challenge. In many cases, we should strengthen our measures to be able to protect our minors from platforms that are abroad and also not only within the European Union, but also beyond. We have put forward certain measures. We've received complaints. We have opened sanctions, but the recent legislation that was approved in July has opened up and taken a step forward with regard to protecting minors online. The general law on audiovisual communication opens up this subjective area with regard to our action as an independent body with regard to the video exchange platforms. What are these platforms? Well, we're talking about services that have been offered by users, uploaded by users. They're not responsible for these contents, but they have to abide by certain measures. This non-responsibility has been the subject of many criticisms, but we have to focus on the measures that have been put forth by the legislation. We have 9 categories of measures that these platforms will have to abide by. First of all, having users classifying contents, making parental control possible, etc. But the most important measure that will support us as regulator, as within the whole industry, to be able to protect minors from harmful content has to do with the age verification systems. They are contemplated by the law. They will decide whether a minor can access certain content or not, especially with regard to violence and porn. What is the role of the CNMC? Well, we have to verify that the verification systems put forward by these platforms are fulfilling the requirements that we have set to be able to protect children. In this regard, this verification will be constant, and the previous report of the Aepd will be essential. This is why we have been closely collaborating with the agency. We have detected several platforms in Spain that apply the country of origin principle. We can only control those that are set in Spain. But as we're saying, we're collaborating with other stakeholders. We have carried out many national actions. We have certain rulings in this regard. And we are also collaborating with Energa through the participation on the European Group of Media. We have also collaborated with the Aepd, as I said, that has allowed us to consolidate the public consultation that was launched this morning on the CNMC webpage. I encourage you to participate in it. With this public consultation on which we have been working from the CNMC, and also thank you to the team, has been possible thanks to collaboration with many stakeholders, among them the Aepd. The public consultation aims at gathering the information so that we can set the criteria to be able to see if an age verification system is ideal or not. When does this age verification has to take place? Within which scope, which sphere? Can it be applied to advertising? Do we have to have minimum requirements with regard to strengthened system in terms of age verification? And also several mechanisms such as banking card, electronic verification, so that the industry can also give its feedback on the matter. In this regard, we are offering several solutions. We are looking into potential gaps and gathering the information so that we can act as supervisors. I also want to highlight that this public consultation is aligned with the code of conduct of the Aepd and the principles that have been explained by Luis. It is an ongoing collaboration, an ongoing activity with all the different authorities that are taking care of children's protection online to at least be able to guarantee this protection. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alejandra. We will now give the floor to Félix Jodra Abuelo, who is the DPD representative of the police force. First of all, congratulations to the agency on its 30th anniversary. It is very important for us to be part of this panel with the Aepd. Well, we work day to day, and even I would say hour to hour, minute to hour, constantly. The agency for us is a reference in the consultations that we make and in the different arguments that are the foundation of our decision. So we are really thankful and fortunate. I have just come back from a symposium in Valencia on human rights protection in the digital sphere, the fourth generation of human rights, and this Congress was closely related to the concept of proactivity. This weekend, we heard about the artificial intelligence project within Europe, and we talked about this concept, proactivity, and allow me the expression that this is the party of proactivity. Right now, we are taking a huge leap forward. We are moving forward. As police force, we have two main features. I would say, on the one hand, teamwork. We also have the state attorney's representative, the Guardia Civil representative, experts in data protection. We all work hand in hand and we're closely related to the agency. And this teamwork is also highlighted by the attendance of organizations' representatives. For instance, the Royal Mint, we collaborate with them too because we have the exclusive competency with regard to documentation, the national identity card and passport. And I am the delegate for data protection, and this is probably, we have the most important database in the country with all the citizens in there. It is a responsibility, it is a challenge, and it is exciting, of course. Can you sleep at night? Well, I must say sometimes I wake up, but in general, it's okay. We're talking about identification. We're talking about minor protection. We're talking about taking steps forward in the evolution of police forces, which has to do with adapting to society, to the needs of society. In July, the Home Secretary order was approved with the new structure of the National Police with two main highlights. On the one hand, the regulation of a digital transformation unit and the creation of a national office for data protection with specific competencies. As police officers, focusing on this wide definition of safety and security, not only with regard to preventing crime, but also giving attention to victims and to vulnerable victims such as minors. If we take into account these three roles, identification, new technologies, and minors, this project, to us, this doesn't mean that we want to be involved in it or committed to it. No, it is very much needed. We are fully committed to it to make it progress. This is something that we've taken into account. Before, the preemptive security was mentioned, and now we talk about anticipation. The Citizen Participation Unit was created a few years ago with a cyber expert plan. We go to schools and we raise awareness, we inform, and we were talking to the people in charge of education of this, the importance of this aspect. I really like the new law on minor protection and teenager protection. And these concepts, as we were saying, this age assessment is essential. This maturity assessment is essential. Having this possibility, also the Guardia Civil does this within territories to be able to educate, train our children, our youngsters at early ages of the importance of the use of technology that, well, we can't turn our back on it. Well, Felix, you're a police officer. I'm going to buy a mobile phone to my son. How old is he? Well, 13. Well, everybody has. All his friends have a mobile phone. Well, great. Great. I was waiting for this card, because we have so much to say in a motivated and enthusiastic way too. But I just wanted to highlight the concept of education, of training. We're not only going to act in a preemptive manner, we have to anticipate proactively, and also taking into account a concept that has already been mentioned, which is the concept of balance. Our role as police force is always going to be backed by the highest guarantees. My boss is here, Fran, and we say often we have to move forward with this app. We're going to ask the agency for a report. We're taking important steps forward. And why are we here? Well, this is what we're here for. We have to improve things. We have to improve the world, especially with regard to technology, big data, a concept that sometimes we forget. We have to understand this, not being there, not only being there, but also making things happen. I really liked the comment from the State Attorney's Office. The cloud is reality, or the director of the agency said this reality, this police reality. In the criminal judging law, there was a shift in the agente.
La red. Pues esa es la idea, que tenemos que seguir.
Undercover agent, this role, this is reality. And if we have to continue applying this law, well, we have to continue along these lines. Why? Well, because society is requesting us to do so. We have to lead together as part of a team, all of us involved in security and safety. We have to respond to the challenge of protecting minors, of protecting their rights, of protecting them in the case of being victims of this situation. And we have to have a high-level response. And the agency is now the leading agency within this process. And this role of the agency, we will continue along this path. I'm also going to include the Guardia Civil in all of this. The police forces will be more present than ever. We are fully involved. We believe in it, and we consider it to be very much needed. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias, don Félix.
Thank you very much, Félix. I'm going to apologize for the General Infrastructure Administration. I'm now going to give the floor to Ms. Morales. Thank you very much. Thank you, Luis. Thank you to the Aepd and specifically to her chairwoman, Mar España, for her persistence. As Felix was saying, wearing this hat as captain of the team, leader, moving forward this project together with all the institutions that are responsible for minor protection. This is our responsibility. Mar is leading, opening the way, and having also the commitment to work together, aligned. Congratulations, and thank you very much for gathering us together and allowing us to take these important steps forward. I am delighted to be part of this process. From the Telecommunications State Secretariat, we are responsible for regulating the telecommunication service providers that are here in Spain, and also that those platforms that provide videos, as Alejandra was mentioning not long ago. Our main role is based on two aspects. On the one hand, regulatory, and on the other hand, the promotion of self-regulation. As for regulation, we participate actively in the negotiation of the Telecommunication Services Directive, so that it was part of this new agent that was becoming important, the video exchange services via platform. I remember that when the Audiovisual Communications Services Directive was published in the official bulletin, I remember the news, Europe is regulating YouTube. Now it is a different phase, incredible speed of change, and Spain is also there to have these service providers included within the scope of the directive, and also to include specific aspects with regard to minor protection was essential. Once the directive was approved, we had to transpose it into our national legislation. We had two options. On the one hand, a surgical modification of the legislation, or we could issue a new legislation. The third vice president of the government opted for this second option, so we got to work. We designed and elaborated this new legislation on audiovisual communication in a consensed manner, and now this new law was passed in July last year. This law has included 2 public audiences. We've included the requirements, the criteria of all the stakeholders involved in this matter. This law is aimed at providing legal security and safety to all stakeholders. It includes the obligations with regard to minor protection of each one of the actors within the audiovisual market, depending on the type of service that is being provided. Radios, for instance, with clear obligations, broadcasting televisions, paid TVs, the video-on-demand services, and also the video exchange services through platforms or social media also aimed at video exchange, also know which obligations they have. I think that within this regulation we have the law, we have a regulatory framework that provides clarity, and it allows the CNMC to fulfill its obligations as supervisor. Additionally, I would like to highlight that the law includes Article 94 with a specific agent, the users that are relevant, that are sharing content via these platforms. Last week, we published a public audience that regulates the different requirements that have to be abided by these users considered with special relevance. All these obligations will have to be abided by in terms of advertising and also in terms of minor protection. As self-regulation and co-regulation, this law, for the first time, I'm happy to see, gathers the concept of self-regulation and co-regulation. Article 15 also is specific to minor protection, with 4 specific codes that can be signed to protect minors. In 2020, we signed with 2 different organizations a code of conduct for advertising within the digital sphere. And as the Councillor for the CNMC said before, we are actively working on the evolution of co-regulation, self-regulation in terms of child protection, to include traditional stakeholders and also the new suppliers that have been included within the legislation. So from the Secretary of State of Telecommunications, we're delighted to be part of this work group. We firmly believe that this has to be a joint solution aimed at the different areas that will have to protect our minors. Thank you, everyone, for everything. Thank you. Thank you very much. I will now give the floor to Raquel Marcena, Director of Digital Services. It is a pleasure for me to be here. When we go to a birthday party, we always take a present, and the agency is celebrating its 30th anniversary with the gift of this incredible initiative. And Mar España, with her words and with also her excitement, organized a meeting to inform us of this project, and we immediately joined it. We are putting forward our experience as Royal Mint We issue notes and coins, but we also carry out many digital services, the technologies associated to the national identity card, to the electronic certificate, also passport, different tickets to different venues, etc. Any device that requires security is associated to the Royal Mint as trustworthy partner. We have to go beyond this. We have to look at the practical impact of this initiative, and we decided to develop an app of age verification. Within this, we thought that it was essential for protection. As we have heard before in the previous panel, our minors are at risk. We are already seeing the impact, and as public service provider, we have to do all that is possible to be able to solve this situation. Security, because we have to offer a secure solution. We are accustomed to do so in all of our services, and reliability, because all of this has to be offered to citizens in a free manner. We are going to abide by the code of conduct put forward by the Aepd. We are not going to limit browsing. We're not going to use biometric images. We're not going to transfer identities to third parties. We cannot allow the geolocalization of minors, and we will abide by all these principles within this app, and hopefully it will be ready during the first semester of 2024. We will also take into account the conclusions offered by the public consultation. We will also, within the app, it will be available for Android and iOS, to include different systems so that you can certify that you are authorized to access certain contents. We are privileged. Thanks to our police forces, this makes us proud. This is a great example in Europe and worldwide. We can identify each Spanish citizen, not only in physical terms with the identity card, but also in electronic terms. And we have to take this opportunity, because either with the identity card or the electronic certificate or a credential electronic system, we can extract from there the necessary authorization to be able to access these contents that will be labeled by the CNMC, among others. We will not store information. We will not store the data. The data will always be in control of users within their own devices and their systems within certain European countries where the minor's mobile phone can be identified. This is just this is something that cannot be defended, and we will abide by all the main principles that are essential to us. And we hope that this app will be practical and that will help us protect all our minors. Happy birthday.
Thank you very much, Raquel. The truth is that I think this roundtable and also the roundtable before the coffee break is just proof of how collaboration, commitment from institutions can be achieved, and how with that we can do what we can do, which is to protect comprehensively the best interest of minors, but also the fundamental rights of all citizens. And I also believe that these roundtables have proven that with this collaboration, we can achieve the nearly impossible, which is fulfill the agenda's time. So fantastic. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias a todos.
Thank you to everyone. Thank you to all the speakers. I'm really sorry about the cars that have been given you, but we had to be very strict with time. You know, protocol reigns. And now we're going to move into the closing session.
Bueno. Vale. 5 minutillos, bueno. Bueno, me gustaría comentarles que mirando...
I would like to say that when I was looking at the panel members, I felt nostalgia because we're celebrating 30th anniversary of the agency, and I've actually been working for them for 30 years. So I know all the directors. They're all here except the first one who was not able to attend. But we have Juan Manuel Fernández López, Artemis Rayo, José Luis Piñar Mañas, José Luis Rodríguez Álvarez, and obviously Mar España. And when the police officers spoke about a specific unit in the police force to defend minors digitally, I remember the first time with the first director when we visited the Les Corials police headquarters, and they looked at us saying, what are they doing here? Why do they come into our kitchens, we could say. And I remember that, well, I mean, things have evolved so much. Not that long ago in the Civil Guard, and we have here, they invited us to an event on data protection organized by the Civil Guard together with Europol. These 30 years have done a lot. We've moved from a situation where we had to explain who we were to now everyone knowing that they have to protect data privacy. And now the full involvement of all these different agents in a project such as this. This is a project for a country. It's not a project from an agency or from a specific institution. It's a project for all of us because we want to defend our children and teenagers, and we want to take this to Europe. And that's what we're doing also with the collaboration of the European President of the European Data Protection Agency, Anne, and also Nicolette, in charge of the Digital Market App and the Digital Service Act. And they're also interested in this project that we are presenting here. And that's been very interesting for all. And it's fantastic to see how this is a project where we have managed together, all the authorities, everyone involved here, we've managed to move this forward. This is a project for a country, like I said before, regardless of the ideologies, and it's something that's going to strengthen and benefit all our children. I'm not sure whether we have the authorities here to conclude.
5 minutitos.
5 more minutes.
Bueno. No sé, con las prisas no hemos tenido tiempo.
So, because we were in such a hurry, we haven't been able to offer the time for questions. No time for questions now either. Never mind, no questions. Okay, so let's move to the closing session. That's going to be carried out by...
Buenos días. Vamos a proceder.
Good morning. So we're going to move on to the closing session, and I'll give now the floor to the Public Prosecutor Officer. Thank you very much.
Buenos días a todos y a todas.
So good afternoon, well, good morning, good afternoon, dear representatives, dear members, dear Minister. I would like to start by congratulating the Spanish Agency on Data Protection and Ms. Mar España for the 30th anniversary of the agency and a deep recognition for the commitment and the wonderful performance of this agency. The right to private data is very important with fundamental rights. And we can see it in the Article 8 of the Fundamental Rights of the European Union Charter and also Article 18.4 of the Spanish Constitution, amongst others. The Public Prosecutor's Office is not alien to this. It's not alien. On the one hand or on the other, the Public Prosecutor's Office has a legal entity. It's part of the government, and it aims to promote the access to justice and the legality and how we treat our citizens. One of the connections between the Aepd and the Public Prosecutor's Office was the first director of the Aepd, which was in fact a public prosecutor, Mr. Martín Casado, a long time ago, from 93 to 98. And then he was the Lieutenant General of the Supreme Court and represented one of the most important figures of the Public Prosecutor's Office. And I think that his appointment and the date of his appointment is what we used to, in fact, celebrate the anniversary of the Aepd. Also, the first director, not only was he a prosecutor, but also there's another link. There are other things that unite us. For instance, the principles, independence in the exercise of their duties, and protecting the rights of citizens. And due to this, for a long time now, we've had a fruitful collaboration and relationship between both. The quick technological evolution, digitization, all the things that were mentioned in this forum are not alien to the knowledge of the Public Prosecutor's Office, and we are sensitive to these new challenges. Even more so as our duty to protect the most vulnerable and social interest within our constitutional duty. And we pay a lot of importance to that for digital fraud, violence against minors, against women, and the protection of those who are more vulnerable, the disabled and the elderly. The Data Protection Agency is a very prestigious and reputational agency nationally and internationally, and their social responsibility policy unites also them with the Public Prosecutor's Office in the desire to protect citizens. And there are different actions where we feel both involved and reflected. For instance, promotion, the sustainable and ethical development of the use of technology, gender equality in order to have a peaceful and more fair society, and the establishment of the agency as a key role to fight digital violence, sexual violence and digital violence that are included in our annual reports and are part of our daily work for all the prosecutors in Spain. Also, paying attention to the most vulnerable people in society, such as the elderly and people with disability and the different people, and also the treatment of minors with the protective nature of the Public Prosecutor's Office, but also with an aim to reform, to improve the use of awareness of the awareness in the use of the internet and the risks it involves. And because of all of that, I would just like to inform you that we have a joint work together. There's a long road ahead of us, and we need to collaborate. There is no other way. We need to make sure that all the public institutions and the national and other authorities are apply the same rules and the same duties and continue to obtain the desire to protect the minors and the most vulnerable segments. We are here, we'll continue to be here together, the Public Prosecutor's Office and the Aepd, to use our talent and the new resources and to continue working very closely. Thank you very much.
Gracias, fiscal.
Thank you, Public Prosecutor, for supporting the initiatives of the Aepd. And now on to officially close, we have the Minister of Justice, Félix Bolaños. Thank you very much for supporting this project that we hope will be a project for the country. Thank you.
Buenos días a todos y a todas.
Good morning to everyone.
Por asistir a esta.
Good morning for being here in this event organized by the Aepd, the director of the Aepd, former directors of the Aepd that have so much contributed to the agency, dear friends here present. I would also like to start, as the public prosecutor did, by congratulating the agency for 3 decades safeguarding the fundamental right, which is increasingly more important and has a heavier weight in our lives and the lives of our children. 3 decades doing it with professionalism and rigor. An agency that has adapted to the digital changes that have been humongous, and therefore the recognition to the director and former directors is very important, and also the recognition to all the civil servants that do their daily work in the agency. Thank you for your role in the prevention, in the education of our citizens to make sure the protection of fundamental rights is always guaranteed in the agency. I would also like to talk about the educational work and training work that you do in the different lines of work you've presented. In today's meeting, well, you've mentioned some, which is a good example. You have made a very interesting adaptations, and you've led initiatives that have had a huge impact on society. Society needs to understand the risks entailed by the digital world, the need to provide solutions. And that's there was a campaign called One Single Click Can Ruin Your Life in 2020, but also other initiatives that you have carried out with other public and private institutions. And I think they are a good example or role model of what we need to do and of the purpose of the Aepd. I think that no one will be surprised when we talk about the value of personal data nowadays. And that value comes hand in hand with the need to protect them and to limit access to the personal data. The volume of data that people have and companies and public authorities have and individual people, anyone in our mobile phone, we have a lot of personal data that we carry with us, and we're probably not aware of what we have. That huge volume of data has multiplied also with added complexities such as a transborder flow or what we call the social media, as well as the huge amount of personal data that is provided in the social media, and that sometimes we need to be aware of the risk that it entails and what we put on the social media. At some point we may want to protect it in the future. That's what I think those concerns, and that's one of the concerns that society currently has, and in the government we are clear about that. We need to have the digital privacy, as we call it, and that is in turn also a right with limits. And those limits, the control of the personal information uploaded onto the social media, is something that the Aepd is working on and is providing many guidelines and projects, which I agree, Mar, are projects for the country. And you're being pioneers in Europe with the projects like the ones that you are mentioning today, that you mentioned today. There are many threats to information and to privacy, many threats that sometimes are publicly known because there are security breaches in companies or in public institutions with cyber attacks that aim to obtain personal data or that aim to access personal data databases or other elements that could be of interest to them. And therefore, those cyber incidents are a reality in our country. And that's why the effort made by companies is such. That's why the effort made by the public authorities and the governments is such, so that we can prevent those threats from materializing. That is why it's so important that the Aepd does what it says it's doing, which is to provide guidelines to adapt to the times, to limit the undesired accesses, because the damages that could be caused because of a breach of data could be huge from a financial perspective, obviously, but also from a reputational perspective of individuals, but also of legal entities. Any breach of security, any incident in a company, without a doubt, will be directly affecting their reputation. And therefore, what can I say? This is important for any threat that could come our way. You know that in the EU legislative framework, we have the regulation on data protection, the GDPR, which means that we all have a specific or the common rules in all the countries regarding the access to the data, the digital economy's development, with providing the elements that the countries need so that the e-commerce can move forward. And another important pillar of this legislation, which is to fight terrorism or an organized crime, something which also happens in the digital world. Our Act, our national data protection law, is now 5 years of age. It was a milestone when it was approved 5 years ago. I think that the 5 years that have elapsed are working to bring to us many things that were disruptive at the time and that no longer seem to be disruptive, and so that the society can adapt to the legislation. I think we have a very positive balance, or we can take a very positive stock when looking at the law. And there's also the Digital Pact for the Protection of People. This is extremely important, especially bearing in mind what you were discussing here this morning. That is why I would like to conclude by referring to the topics that you have discussed this morning. The protection of children and teenagers, which is so concerning for mums and dads, and the impact of electronic devices on the health and well-being of our children. Even yesterday, we announced a debate. It wasn't a measure. This is a shared competition, shared competence, as we said, so that both primary and secondary schools could limit the access to mobile phones in our country. And that's a debate that we wanted to start having in our country and that we think is interesting. It's not just a debate in Spain. This will be a debate that would affect humankind as a whole. And I think that we need to be aware that the advances made in given a digital era and given where we are in a digitized country and modern country such as Spain, we need to also be aware of the risks that all of this entail. So that's why everything that you've discussed today is very important in order to know the opportunities and also the risks presented by these devices, especially for children and especially for teenagers, because maybe they have no experience or they do not have any life experience to be able to identify the risks or to see the risks in sharing a picture of their own data or information. Maybe they are not aware of how and where they may be exposed to improper or inappropriate content for them, but also including other behaviors that but also grooming, for instance, that is also criminal offense. And the Aepd has been pioneers on how to do this, and also through sanctioning through all the adaptations needed in order to be in line with the society. And finally, the public authorities ourselves, the government of Spain, the regional governments, and the local governments. This discussion, I mean, I remember when I was at university, well, a long time ago, not that long, but a while ago, I remember discussing the possibility that citizens will have a digital portfolio. All the paperwork could be done digitally from home, etc. We've advanced incredibly over the last few years, and it is true that now with the electronic ID, we can carry out most of the tasks that we need to do as citizens. In 2022, we approved a royal decree, the national scheme of security, in order to protect the data in those services provided. This is a challenge for institutions. It's not the challenge of actually being able to do some paperwork online. That's not what I mean. It means being able to guarantee the traceability of the data, guarantee the confidentiality and integrity, being able to, that we are making sure that we are able to do and to provide all the guarantees in that data processing. I think there's still a challenge on digital governments, and this is we're taking huge steps, but we need to continue working on that. We have to make sure, and we are doing that, making sure that we are in a trusted environment. And I would like to value what the agency is doing, so that the public authorities can meet the needs of citizens. They just want their life to be easier, which is what governments have to do. It's what all governments try to do, which is to try and make life easier for citizens. Let me conclude. Let me underline the congratulations to the agency, the Spanish Data Protection Agency. Congratulations for your 30 years of public service to citizens. I wish you not just 30 more, but many, many more, always adapting to the circumstances. The Aepd of 30 years ago, led by a public prosecutor, has nothing to do with the Aepd that we have now and the one that we will have in 10 years. And the Aepd needs to adapt to a hugely changeable context, such as the digital world. That's part of our life. Thank you very much and have a good day.